Today, our guest is co-chairman of Armenian Assembly of America, Anthony Barsamian. Mr. Barsamian, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Always a pleasure.
Mr. Barsamian, the U.S. House of Representatives recently decided to limit American military aid to Azerbaijan. What kind of assistance we are talking about?
So I think what this is Congress allocates money for DoD funding and foreign funding. I believe this is part of that budget that the United States Congress will pass in the omnibus budget.
Does this bill require the same decision made by Senate and President Joe Biden's signature? If so, how likely is that Senate and President would get the same decision?
Yes. So what happens is it passes the House and then it moves over to the Senate, and then they have a committee, joint House and Senate committee, review it, and then it goes to the president for signature. So depending on, and I said this when I was in Armenia, Sarkis, I said that the United States will restrict and limit funding to Azerbaijan if they don't start becoming better in the peace process, if they don't have a full and unequivocal release of hostilities against Armenia. And I think what we're seeing right now is the United States is sending a signal saying that unless Azerbaijan pulls back its forces off Armenia's borders, recognizes Armenia's borders, and stops the aggression against Armenia, the U.S. are going to start placing sanctions on Azerbaijan.
The main question is, what does it mean? I mean, what does the House decision mean? So, is it mean that Washington to try to have more involvement in this region in South Caucasus?
I believe so. Under the Minsk Group and OSCE, Russia, the United States, and France are currently involved in the relationship, and they want to make sure that the parties start abiding by a negotiating process. Both parties, Armenia, Azerbaijan, including Artsakh, need to come back to the table. And Armenia, I believe, is willing to be at the table. Azerbaijan, because of Turkish encouragement, has shown aggression towards Armenia and continues to show aggression. I think the United States is sending a very clear message. Back off, or else we will start placing sanctions against Azerbaijan.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible that after this decision we can have some kind of American sanctions against Azerbaijan?
So 907 was waived, which we disagree with, the Armenian American community. We would like to see 907 enforced, but now they're looking at funding mechanisms, and Congress will limit that. Let's be honest that no country wants another country inside its territory, and Azerbaijan has showed the arrogance to think that they're going to walk over the border into Armenian lands. It's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable to the world. Certainly not acceptable to the democratic countries that support Armenia. And Armenia, being a democratic country, is being threatened by a dictator. And President Aliyev, supported by Turkey, needs to understand that this just won't be tolerated.
Mr. Barsamian, what does Washington think on Nagorno-Karabakh problem, on Armenian, Azerbaijani border issues, on Armenian prisoners of war held by Azerbaijan?
Well, as you saw, when Phil Reker was in the region, he worked very hard to get more of the POWs released. I mean, I think the United States understands very clearly that in the peace or the ceasefire deal that prisoners of war were not to be kept. Armenia has returned their prisoners of war, and Azerbaijan is in direct violation of their own agreement. So Azerbaijan is playing a very dangerous game right now. They are testing Russia, they're testing the United States, and they're testing France, the co-chairs. To think a small country like that has the arrogance to test the great powers who are in the region trying to formulate a lasting peace is a large problem. It's a large problem for Azerbaijan, and as I said, Mr. Aliyev's problems are just beginning.
You were talking about American-Armenian bilateral relations. What new things can we expect in near future?
I think you're going to see more infrastructure investment into Armenia. We are pushing very hard for a better security mechanism that probably the United States will fund and help secure Armenia's borders. We'll probably work with Russia. I mean, the best outcome for Armenia is to have its partners, Russia, the United States, France, all working together. That is in the best interest of Armenia, and that's also something that Armenian Americans would agree with. So this is the one place in the world where we believe Russia and the United States can work together. It's certainly in Armenia, and we encourage those countries to do what they can to assist Armenia right now. Armenia is getting its footing back. It certainly has the sympathy of the international community. Artsakh has the sympathy of the international community. And as I said in previous interviews, Artsakh needs to be internationalized. It needs to be protected with the support of Armenia, which it's always had the tradition of having a strong Armenian support in Artsakh. And that's something that, you know, based on its own territory, it needs to have that self-determination to continue.
You know that Lilit Makunts is appointed as Armenian ambassador to United States. What kind of reaction are there in Washington, or what kind of post for diplomacy, Armenian diplomacy, do you expect in particular toward America?
I met with Ambassador Makunts when I was in Armenia. You know, the Armenian Assembly specifically will support any ambassador that Armenia feels should come to the United States. We, as the Armenian American community and the Armenian Assembly, will do our best to support her agenda, just like we did with Ambassador Nersessian, who is departing for London. Our job really is to understand very clearly and directly what Armenia's priorities are in the region, and then support as much as we can based on our aligned interests. As you know, the Armenian Assembly is independent and will do its own work in Washington as an Armenian American advocacy organization. But certainly, these are very well prepared leaders, and they have the right to send who they want to Washington, and we will work with those people. So we hope that that opens up a new chapter in relations between Washington and Yerevan, and you know, we're willing to do our part as always.
Mr. Barsamian, thank you very much for this interview.
Good to see you again, Sarkis. See you soon.